Rory O'Connor, you're welcome.
Thanks, Johnny.
That's it.
Yeah, good to see.
Nothing more to offer. You come in with a keep cup.
I did, yes.
Sign of things to come.
Oh, I had one before. This is not a resolution. This is not a fad. This is
no fad. I cycled in this morning.
But one second.
What did you do, Bernie?
You had a keep cup and you didn't keep it.
No, I did. Yeah, no, this is the same one I had before Christmas.
Very effeminate.
Oh, right. I thought you meant you had another one before that.
So I had to have two on the go.
All men.
Otherwise, you're doing the washing the whole time. It is.
You didn't have an article about keep cups yesterday, but you did have a very interesting article about the Irish scrum half situation. Now, where are we with this? Because you would probably point out, I think you've been consistent with this, that Conor Murray should be vulnerable. Schmidt was playing him and Sexton when the partnership clearly wasn't working last year, but this may not be the case with Farrell in that. And this is a point that I, as not really a rugby fan, but something that I could definitely see happen. Farrell has to make some statement of intent as well. Yeah. And is this going to be it?
It might be. We don't know. Like, this is the not the problem. It's the exciting thing, I suppose, about the fact that we're going into a Six Nations with a new coach for the first time since 2013.
And we're only a month away.
You know, all bets are off. I know he was part. We are less than a month. I mean, it was the 1st of February. It's the first game. It's quite early this year.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think it's one of the major talking points, and it's one of the major barometers of what he's going to do. So he's worked with Conor Murray in the 2013 Lions Tour, the 2017 Lions Tour. He's been involved in a setup where Conor Murray has been an automatic first choice since 2016, and has been one of the best players, if not the best player in the Irish team during most of that time.
Prior to his neck injury.
Prior to his neck injury, and he has not come back from that neck injury in the same form, able to do the same things, able to influence games in the same way. And yeah, you know, it's hard. It was hard to argue last year that he should have been dropped at any point, but on reflection, with the benefit of hindsight, you wonder whether being left out sometime around the Six Nations last year
would have helped.
Would have maybe given him the kick up the backside to kind of come back stronger.
But is the kick up the backside, or is it a physical ailment, or is it a mental thing?
Well, we don't know, because we can only observe what we're seeing on the pitch. He's definitely not as, like, his pass is dropping off. He's not as sharp. He's a bit more ponderous around the breakdown. And as it happens, the IRFU's policies there to support Andy Farrell and to give Andy Farrell options have created a situation. We've got 4 Irish scrum halves starting, 6 now, because Connacht have 2 very good players, and Leinster have 2 very good candidates as well. So we've got lots of Irish contenders. So the field has improved, and Conor Murray has come back to them a bit. And it is one of the big questions. Like, I think John Cooney is the former half in Ireland.
Well, also play Munster tonight.
Yeah.
So are we expecting both to be playing?
They are staying. Yeah, he's been named.
So this is it's a really kind of interesting subplot to the game itself.
Oh, like, it's probably the plot. Like, you know, it's Pro 14 in January. You know, this is like we're moving into Six Nations selection period. The squad is going to be named in the next 2 weeks. I like personally. I'm going up to the game. Carberry's starting as well, so I really want to see what he's like. There's a few other players I'm looking forward to see.
Now.
Carberry's just back. He came back last weekend off the bench against Leinster and got through about 30 minutes because JJ Hanrahan got injured. So they kind of have to play him because they've got injuries elsewhere.
It's a fascinating game, so on many levels. Cause
it's the most interesting Interpro.
Where does Carberry fit in the Six Nations?
Well, this is the thing. Like, if Carberry gets 6 weeks of good rugby under his belt, not 6 weeks, 4 weeks of good rugby, if he gets the next 3 games, 2 European games under his belt, and Sexton's not playing, like, the one thing I would take from the World Cup was Ireland have to pick on form. You can't just rely on reputations. Now, coaches will build models around the amount of caps you want to have players going into World Cups, because there is a kind of an example of that in other countries of who've been successful before. New Zealand ripped that up last year. South Africa ripped that up. All bets are off now. And if Andy Farrell wants to get a winning start, and if he wants to light fires under players as well, it has to be, like, if Joey Carberry comes out and is man of the match in the next 3 games, then I think he should be starting for Ireland in the Six Nations.
With who alongside him?
With who? Well, probably John Cooney, because John Cooney, unless Conor Murray has a brilliant month, John Cooney's the form player.
Okay, so let's.
But that's the way I look at it.
Let's hypothesise here, though. How would Cooney and Carberry work in your ideal situation?
Well, that is a risk.
Never played with each other before.
Very limited time in training together. So yeah, you're Andy Farrell coming in. It's your first game. There's a bit of, you know, you're a bit burnt from the World Cup as well as everyone else. You want to get 2 wins under your belt against Scotland and Wales, and you've got Conor Murray sitting in one corner with Johnny Sexton, like the most experienced, the second most experienced Test combination in history, the most experienced Irish Test combination in history, and then you've got Carberry and Cooney. Now, Cooney's only a year younger than Conor Murray, so age profile is not a big thing for him, but Carberry is probably going to be Ireland's out half of the next World Cup if fitness goes his way, because, you know, I just can't see Sexton getting there personally.
But you're talking about 2 kind of off-the-cuff players as well, aren't you? And that it could be amazing, and it probably would need time to bed in if it happened.
Yeah, well, that is the thing. Like, I mean, Farrell wants to win. Farrell wants to win the Six Nations. I mean, what better start could he get than bouncing into the, taking Leinster's form and putting it into a Six Nations and getting a trophy in his first one to just basically move on from that World Cup, eradicate some of the bad smell that's hanging around. So it's a massive call. And it's not an easy call. Like, I think people are very quick, and it's easy for me to sit in here and say, Cooney, Carbery, let's go for it. Let's face it.
Your head isn't on the line.
My head isn't on the line. So it is a difficult call for him. It also depends who's at 12, who's at 8. Does he go Caelan Doris as his young player as the number 8, which means he probably wants to have an experienced 9 and 10 outside him because he's been making his international debut. So there's all sorts of scenarios at play. But if you're going on form, if you're picking an Ireland 15 based on the season so far, Conor Murray's not in it. Like, it's John Cooney. He's outstanding. He's making some of the same mistakes as Murray. But the next thing he does is nearly always like a try or a game-changing tackle. And he's one of these guys, his highlights reel is incredible this season. I know maybe he shouldn't be picking on highlights reels, but we can only see what we see. And I think he deserves his chance.
Has Murray ever had any doubts throughout his career? Is this the first time he's ever
Since he's become established, not really. I mean, his story is remarkable, the way he came through on the eve of the 2011 World Cup. Kind of had a really good run towards the end of that season for Munster. And then basically took... leapfrog both O'Leary and Stringer and Redden into that position. Joe Schmidt dropped him for his second game. He played against Samoa in his first game, and then he got dropped for the Australia game. They lost heavily, and he was reinstated for the New Zealand game a week later. And it may more have been a squad manager, resting him and keeping him fresh for New Zealand. I'm not sure, but it was a bit of a kind of a message saying, look, I like Colin Redden. I'm willing to trust him in big games. That was the last time that really ever happened. I think the nadir for it was the time that he did his shoulder over in Cardiff in, I think, the 2017 Six Nations. And he clearly only had one arm, and Joe Schmidt left him on for about 15 minutes.
That's right, yeah.
And, that was kind of a sign that, I don't trust any of these guys.
Yeah.
But, I mean, Ireland beat New Zealand and England without him in 2018. So there is while he is, on his day, the second best scrum half in the world, he hasn't been on his day for a while. And maybe a period coming off the bench, maybe just a kick up the backside, as I say, is what it is, because I think there is a cosy group of Ireland players who've been the trusted leadership core of that Ireland setup for so long that needs to be broken up a bit, and it needs to be a bit of fresh life.
I think that's the intriguing narrative about the Six Nations, and that there's a new coach who has to put his stamp on it, and that element of doubt about who he's going to drop and who's going to be the fall guy and so forth. Ronan O'Gara has a really interesting article in the Irish Examiner today. Ask the local boulangerie about relegation anxiety. He'll tell you a couple of really interesting lines, just going on about proper kind of hard rugby being beneficial towards players. Maybe after what happened at the World Cup, it might be better for Irish players to get tested in a hostile environment more often. Leinster down in Limerick, we could have had Sexton or Henshaw getting gut-checked in front of a hostile crowd, 20,000 plus, hoping they screw up every time they're near the ball. That's surely good for the development of a player. And then he said, for everyone's benefit, a full metal jacket Leinster v Munster is a prerequisite in Irish rugby, and for Irish rugby, it's not as if the players are overburdened with pressure fixtures or dealing with the threat of relegation. And which is interesting as well, because obviously Leinster have 13 games, they've won 13 on the bounce, and he's making the point that even that game that they had, the two of them playing each other there over the Christmas was really beneficial. And this is a fascinating week, because Leinster play Connacht tomorrow, as well as the four Irish provinces in action against each other.
Yeah, and if you go on Instagram, you can see that half of the Ireland squad are off in New York or South Africa or having their holiday. So O'Gara, I don't think you can discount. We have this system, and it's worked very well for us in Six Nations. It works very well for us in the European Cup, but it didn't do anything for us in Japan. So
who's to blame for there?
See, I think we all accepted that the Irish system was protecting the players, and was a good thing that players. Oh, look, it means this part of the season, but they're in the middle of a 13-month season. They do need a rest at some stage, or that is the theory, that they need a rest. It does seem strange that you'd ask players to go 13 months without any sort of a break, and giving them a 2-week break over Christmas seems like a good idea to refresh them so that they come into that Six Nations in good form. Because the English players are playing big games against each other all over the Christmas period. But if you have a man of Ronan O'Gara's stature in France saying what he's saying, I think you have to listen to him. You can't just go, sure, look, he's a La Rochelle coach. He's fighting a battle himself. He's fighting his own corner, it's his own agenda. Ronan O'Gara cares about Irish rugby, and I think we do have to recognise the fact that these games have been diminished, and it's a price that we seem to be willing to pay. Certainly the fans are still going to the games. I don't think people are tuning in to the same degree that they would if it was, like last year Sexton Carberry was a really good draw for that game, but this year, like that game was a bit of a nothing match.
I'm a casual rugby supporter. I don't even know. I can't even remember the results of that.
Well, it was Munster
A couple of years ago, I would have definitely tuned in.
Yeah,
Munster
exactly.
losing their home record was obviously
it was, but it wasn't like it was fair. It wasn't a bad Munster side, and it wasn't a bad Leinster side. They're all good players, and they're all part of it. It's become a 50, 60-man game almost over the course of rugby season. But I do think O'Gara is right.
I don't have an issue in a way though. Like Leinster are blooding players with such prospects in the future, and they can do that and give players game time and kind of bring them forward in their development.
Like it's something that Leinster seem quite happy. Like I think the provinces are quite happy to accept it, apart from the fact that Leinster are so much stronger than everyone else that they can rest so many. Like they even were able to rest half the World Cup squad for the first game of the Interpros and half of them for this one, and they'll still pitch up with a pretty strong team full of internationals at home at the RDS tomorrow. Like it's a catch-22. I mean, if you don't give them a rest, you end up with, like, you know, in Australia for a 3-test series with all your players injured. You know, I think it has to be on the table. Everything has to be on the table after that World Cup. So it's one of the things that has to be on the table. But like the decisions were all these plans were put in place way before. So I don't think they were ever going to change it. But would Irish rugby be better for full-blooded interpros all the time? From a competitive point of view, yes. Would it be good for the health of the players coming into the Six Nations? Would it cause injury? Maybe, but would it be more battle hardened? That's the kind of balancing act.
Are you worth losing one or two to have everybody battle hardened?
Well, if the squads are as deep as certainly Leinster squad is as deep as they look, you know, like I think they've, you know, well, maybe it is worth it. You know, maybe that's the price you pay, and you know, like it's the eternal thing of, do you sack off Six Nations for a World Cup down the line, or do you trust your depth? I mean, do you say, right, we can afford to lose one or two and then press into it? These are decisions that are being made by Jason Cowman, the head of strength and conditioning in the RFU, Nusafora, the overseer of it all, and Andy Farrell, and they're kind of making these decisions in tandem with each other. This is the way Irish rugby has done it for the last couple of years. It obviously, I don't know, was it too late for the World Cup review to take it out? I mean, Andy Farrell was hard professional in his time in rugby league. Like, he was man of steel in the English Rugby League for twice in his career, which I think you don't earn easily. So he knows the value of being battle hardened. He knows what it takes to get through a season. He was a proper hard professional, and if he's looking at it going, we need to protect these players, you got to respect that as well. But I do think that I think that the spectacle would have benefited. I think from a competitive point of view, we would have benefited. But whether Ireland would have gotten through to Paris on March, whatever date it is, with as many players fit, I'm not sure. But, you know, is cotton wool the right thing? These are the questions.
We asked the same question in racing. That album photo goes to Cheltenham on the back of a Nick and Spoon race, with all due respect to the race at Tramore. But he goes in fresh, whereas then should he have a battle-hardened campaign and be kind of more ready for jumping fence and speed? But it's funny, we were talking earlier about when we only had like the 2 channels or the 6 channels at home, and I do remember Andy Farrell playing rugby league on Saturdays, and it was on like ITV or whatever it was. Yeah. But to think
they never lost that weekend team, as far as I could tell.
Yeah, and like I do remember Andy Farrell was the player that constantly popped up. I'm intrigued by how it's going to work out with Ireland. From your perspective, how different is he to Schmidt? Like, Schmidt, obviously, that hard kind of, you know, all about the regimental nature of the team. And with Dave Carney's comments, I think that Ireland will be more expansive. How do we call this? What's he like as a personality from your perspective?
We get a very... he's very different. He's very much... like, Schmidt was very... I don't think he's as controlling as Joe Schmidt. I think every head coach has...
He couldn't take over that Irish team and ape what Schmidt did, because I think the players probably need a release as well.
Yeah, I think one of the benefits that he has is that he was there for the last 3 seasons of Joe Schmidt's time in charge, and he was there to learn from one of the best coaches in the world. And no doubt he did.
Good and the bad.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, he would have seen the World Cup and the control and the increase of pressure over and over again, and the focus on small stuff. Like what I always, you know, would have worried about with Joe over time was the fact that he sweat the small stuff all the time. You get so annoyed with something that was written in a paper or something that was said about a referee or little decisions that it would just eat at him inside, and he'd waste energy, and he'd spend time in meetings talking about it with players, and you're like, that's not a good use of energy. I mean, he had 24 hours of the players last week. I mean, the reports are good. He brought the families in at the end. You know, it all sounds good. He's also worked alongside Eddie Jones, Warren Gatland, Stuart Lancaster. He's picked up little bits off all of them.
It's an incredible array of talents.
He's also been an unbelievable player over his time, but he's never been the main man who's had to make the big decisions. He's already made one or two. You know, they were fairly, like, you know, leaving Rob Kearney out, I think, was, while he's a great servant to Irish rugby, it's an easy one to justify to yourself, and I don't think it was. I'm sure it was a tough conversation, because I wouldn't say Rob Kearney took it lying down. I think the bigger decisions are coming, but in terms of, he's a very different character, and he doesn't give a huge amount of himself away. Like, I thought the stuff from his press conference was quite guarded, quite reasonably cagey.
Yeah,
he's great in the week of a match. He's a real, like, if you're trying to write back pages, he'll come in with a message and he'll deliver. You've probably seen his I don't know if you've seen his lines, speeches, like, they're real. He's well able to stand in front of a room and deliver messages. He's less likely to go into the intricacies of why you go for John Cooney over Conor Murray. I think he kind of shies away from that stuff.
Which is fair enough.
Yeah, it is. But he'll also come into the room. I remember coming into the room during one of the windows last year, and we asked him about Jordan Larmour, and he just went, Jordan Larmour is now ready to be one of the best players in the world, and this is why. Schmidt would never do that. He'd start talking about Craig Gilroy, and he'd start talking about players that we haven't even heard of that are coming through the system. And he'd eventually come around to Larmour and say, Larmour has a lot of work to do. And, you know, in the 16th minute of the second half last week, he actually took, you know, he stepped off his left when he should have stepped off his right.
More of a Jim Gavin style.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Whereas I think Farrell will come out, maybe, when he wants to back a player and give a player confidence, he'll back that player. So that's, and again, you end up defaulting to the media stuff.
Yeah.
Behind the scenes, it's hard to say.
I'm asking you some tough questions here, but
he's more of an armour on the, I'd say he's more of an armour on the shoulder.
Well, Schmidt wasn't, presumably, or at least, you know, he was like the principal of the school that you had respect for, and you performed.
And the head prefects might have got the armour on the shoulder behind closed doors in those leadership meetings.
It's a beautiful analogy.
The head prefects were, well, you started, Johnny, and Thursday.
Because the head prefects were looked on,
and that's that group that I think that's that group that I think needs to be maybe a little bit broken up and just integrated back into the squad. I think there needs to be more of a flat system, and that's what happened in New Zealand. Although, you know, they obviously beat Ireland but didn't beat England. But what they did in the last year under Kieran Reid was they went away from being, you have to earn your stripes in this environment, and became, you come in, as soon as you come in, you're an All Black, and you've got a voice. And I think that has to be there as well. So, like, James Ryan's voice needs to be equally as important as Johnny Sexton's voice. Equally, Will Connors, the newest man of the squad, or Caelan Doris. They might be 21, 22. They need to be given their head as well. So I think it needs to be flatter structure.
I know you're a big Gaelic Games fan, so you have the option of staying in for the Gaelic Games chat if you so desire.
Is there room for me?
Oh, absolutely. There's always. Before you go though on the rugby, my cat.
My cat.
So this is the I suppose it's the dark horse element of this team. What's he going to bring? And like as a real, like, you're kind of, there's a lot of guesswork going on in terms of how the Cat Farrell dynamic is going to work, I suppose.
Well, I think Cat and Farrell would have worked quite a lot
Cat
on...
and Farrell sounds really good.
Cat and Farrell.
I think they would have worked quite a lot on the England attack in the ahead of the 2015 World Cup under Lancaster. And I think what we see with Leinster is probably what we're going to see from Ireland over time. That kind of more of a heads-up game, more of a you know, less of a set, like, you know, there'll be a set-piece structure, but once you get through that, it's not just settling into bam, 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 and then box kick. It's going to be, and that's probably reducing Joe Schmidt's game plan a little bit more than they should. But I think they'll try and play through the phases a little bit more. They'll have more in their locker for that. They'll be, this phrase I hate it, but comfortable in chaos. That they'll be able to deal with whatever comes a little bit better. I think he tried to do that with Italy, but he didn't have the players. That England team were attacking really well until they got to that World Cup and just got lost in the pressure of that World Cup. I remember being there for the World Cup warm-up against Ireland, and they were phenomenal. Now, they had unbelievable pace on the wings. So he's a bit unknown quantity. Again, a bit like but Farrell does. I think Farrell, he's not going to be in charge of the defence in the same way he was. Easterby's going to be doing a lot of that. So I think Farrell will have a big say. I think we'll see a lot more of Saracen style as well, where you know, there's kind of going to be a front line with Sexton or Carbery operating behind it and picking their moments to come through and do it. You know, players, forwards passing the ball out the back to where the backs have a bit more space. But it's going to take time. And, you know, I don't think it's all going to work perfectly well against Scotland in a couple of weeks' time. It's going to take a little bit of time.
We'll be back after the ads. Will Rory O'Connor be here? You'll have to wait and see.
OTB AM.